So today, throughout the show, guys, we've been focusing on how the global economy will be reshaped by the changes in monetary policy, as we've seen from Fed Chair Powell today, and the future of fiscal spending as well, all responding to the pandemic. But first and foremost, you need to get a read on where the economy actually is. And interestingly, Joe, I know it's one that you keep a close eye on, Arbor Research and Trading, a key firm that's got a bit of an alternative way to gauging that economy. And you're looking at one of their data points. For example, they're looking all about Google searches, right?
Yeah, I love this. So it's like Google searches give a real-time look at what's going on with the economy because people don't lie to the Google search box. And we do see this bifurcation, according to their data, in sort of recruitment searches, picking up much better in the low-risk states than the high-risk states. So, overall, recovery trend sort of ish, doing okay, still improving, but definitely the virus seems to be having an impact still on the labor market, at least when you look at this number.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see when we get to a stage here, guys, where it sort of balances out, where you start to see not only the recruitment activity pick up, but you also start to see a lot more of the people who either were left the labor force willingly or were booted out because of the crisis start to flow back in. For more on this topic, let's bring in Benjamin Breitholtz. He's a data scientist with Arbor Research and Trading, joining us right now. Ben, what exactly are you seeing in the data that you look at right now that would give sort of any insight into whether we're starting to see or we're going to get anytime soon a little bit more of a balance in the labor market?
Sure. So what had happened in June and really into the early portion of July was a stagnation or a plateau. We saw it in home basis hours worked. We saw it in Indeed's job postings, which are still about 21% or so below where we'd expect them to be. But search activity also plateaued, and this can be looked at from the job seeker's perspective, recruitment, how many people are searching about job interviews and part-time, full-time employment. But over the past 2 weeks, we've actually seen things improve. So as Joe had just said, within high-risk states, there's been a rebound from more tepid growth. Search activity, for example, for recruitment is still about 17% or below what we would expect based on 2018, 2019 averages. But in these lower risk states or places like Illinois, New York, where you are located, search activity has rebounded in the past 2 weeks quite markedly and is actually now 11% above baseline. And when we get these stretches in recruitment relative to the degree of job seeking, which is also improving, we tend to see healthy job gains. So, for example, our own estimates for payrolls this August remain somewhere around 1.3, 1.4 million, not too far from economists' estimates that are coming in at the moment. And in the background too, and we can get into this a little bit, is the consumer space also remains quite healthy, as evidenced by a job market that may be coming back online.
Well, I wanted to ask you about if there's any interesting data that you're seeing regarding consumption post the expiry of the unemployment insurance expansion, because it's now been, probably about a month now almost, or maybe a little longer, and there were a lot of fears that that cliff would happen and would get this big drop-off in demand. What are you seeing in the data that talks about consumer demand for goods and services?
Sure. So this is where things get confusing. So we've seen a larger amount of dispersion since mid-June, but every time you'd expect things to really see or expect the consumer to see a setback, we've seen something else take its place and seen growth improve. So for example, back to school. If you look at clothing, apparel specifically for children, that's actually fallen somewhat off of the map, 4 or 5% below baseline expectations. But on the flip side, you have spending potentially increasing with this back to school season as consumers go out and search for consumer electronics. That is up 27%. In terms of versus our baseline expectations. And that also goes on the line for anything related to the housing market. So with housing remaining so darn strong, we just saw new home sales, 14%, that begets further purchases. So that search activity, for example, for home furnishings is still running 16% above trend. Kitchen appliances, for example, running somewhere around 13% above trend. And you can go down the line across anything that you need within a home. We were joking, I know, on Twitter, Joe, about vacuum cleaners, but any of these items are still well above baseline. And this is somewhat of a ubiquitous situation across the country, unlike like when we get into autos and certain other items and services, a little bit of higher dispersion. But within the home space, we're seeing nearly all metros see similar search activity, and home improvement, somewhat reigns supreme.
Literally just purchased a new vacuum. My life gets pretty exciting down by my end of it. I know, I'm on trend, guys. What can I say? Talking, though, Ben, about the data that you look at, how granular does it get, and how much can you show sort of the move towards inclusion, the fact that the labour market has not been going towards the lower income in particular? This is the fight for Fed Chair Powell. How much can you see that stratification and difference in perhaps gender that we see, but also income?
Right. So the data is obviously anonymous. We can drill down into specific metros, municipalities, cities, and then we can get a flavor for what the demographics, the wage growth, job market looks within those actual locations. We can't drill down into necessarily gender and get a perfect sense of inequality. But for example, I was looking at today a lot of these different consumer favorite kind of consumer items to search for. Some of our most leading indicators, I mean, anything from beauty and fitness to urban transportation and so on. And there's no doubt that there's a relationship right now with metros that have a higher degree of hourly wage earners, and particularly lower wages, somewhere around $600 to $800 per week, are seeing diminished activity that's typically around maybe 5 to 10% below the more dense, high-wage metros like a New York City or a Chicago or a San Francisco.
Benjamin, great having some time with you. Benjamin Breitholtz there, data scientist at Arbor Research and Trading. That's all from What You Miss.
Bloomberg Technology is up next.
Have a great evening, everyone. This is Bloomberg.